Revos that are unscrewing themselves after failures, Ender 3s that are having some issues with their first layers, and you probably should not stick that in there. All this and more, PrintFix Friday, episode 66. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to YouTube's longest weekly print fail fix video series. Remember, if you want to get your fails featured on here and have me take a look at them, you could do so by tagging us on all the social medias, sliding into those DMs, or just using the hashtag PrintFix. I do my best to keep an eye on it. We've got a great set of fails for you guys today, both resin and FDM, so if you're here for a bit of the mix, you're going to enjoy this one. And I hope you'll enjoy it as much as you'll enjoy this message from our sponsor, 3D Musketeers. If you are looking to fail a little bit less, you can reach out to the pros at 3D Musketeers. While we still might deal with print failures from time to time, it is no longer your problem. Pros at 3D Musketeers have over 40 years of experience making parts for people just like you every single day. Whether they're very simple parts that might be interesting little vases or carbon fiber parts you need for the toughest jobs on planet Earth, we've got you covered from art to part. We also do 3D scanning, so if you have a part that you really don't want to spend the time to CAD it out, you can ship it to us and we'll take care of the scan for you, lickety split. Or so. We got a bit of a backlog right now. Work with me on that. But we do have experts in many fields to help you get your ideas out of your head and into your hands. That's what we do here at 3D Musketeers. We make awesome. That's what we want you to do as well. And if you want to support the videos that we do here on this channel, and you got a couple of bucks to spare, you can join Patreon or YouTube channel members for as low as $1 a month. And that money goes directly into helping this channel grow and make videos like these possible. We would greatly appreciate any support that you have. We recognize that not everyone is looking to spend some money this time of the year. Of course, it is the holidays, and that means money can be tight. So a like, share, subscribe, and hey, leave a comment while you're at it. Goes a long way to helping the channel grow as well. Tell your friends about us. There's this weird guy that yells about things from time to time, and every now and then he actually gives us some decent advice. Hopefully that's what you guys think of me. Maybe you think a little bit more, or maybe you don't. But if you don't, you probably found me from Facebook. Anyways, let's get into those fails. Ender 3 failing, raft prints fine, problems arise at the first layer. Let's take a look. First off, not a raft, it is a skirt. So remember, skirt flows around your part, brim is attached to your head, and rafts are pretty much useless. We got an Ender 3 here that's having some problems. We can see it's just not sticking well. The corners are lifting, and here, let's enhance this just a little bit. Basically, small surface features are not sticking. One of the first things to do that I see here, the bed is dirty. Now, I don't know if that's leftover glue or residue or something. I don't care, clean it. Start with that. Get your bed clean, get that done. I like the knock to a fan. Props for that, hamburger fans for the win. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's fine. Knock to a fans look like hamburgers. We're not getting some sticktivity here. I would look at your temperatures as well. Let's see if we got some information about this. 200 with Overture PLA, and the big key is that it's black. I know what you're saying, but Grant, it's black. It's not white filament. You don't like white filament. Yeah, that's true. Black requires more heat. 200 should be fine, like intrinsically 200 should be fine, but just be careful on that. I would really make sure that your bed is clean, because if it's not, this is gonna be like a pretty quintessential problem. The next step is really to mess with temperatures. Sometimes black filament likes to be hotter. In fact, when we print darker filaments like the carbon fiber PETG that's printing right behind me, that is printed a little bit hotter when we're using the color black versus when we be running normal materials. So just something to be aware of there. But I would say let's get that bed clean. Let's slow down your first layer. 20 millimeters a second should be fine. You're printing a benchy from what I can tell, so don't worry about it. Get that thing clean with isopropyl alcohol. Might even start, assuming there is some glue on that bed, start with hot water and dish soap, then go through some isopropyl alcohol. Go ahead and get that thing rolling. Now, again, this is that carborundum glass plate that comes on Creality printers. I don't like it. I've said many times I don't like it. My preference is to go over to a flex plate, maybe something from Wham Bam. Of course, remember, only a couple of weeks left for 10% off of the entire Wham Bam store using the code Musketeers 2022. Links, of course, in that description down below. But a case like this, 9 times out of 10, it's gonna be a bed. It's just gonna be a dirty bed. This happened. Now my Prusa restarts itself whenever I try and preheat it to remove the blob. Yeah, Yep, blobs of doom. We've been over this before. Blobs of doom suck. The problem that we're dealing with on this specific blob of doom is right on this side of your hot end. It should be on this side of your hot end, is your thermistor and heater wire, and it is sufficiently coated in plastic. What that likely means is that you have broken a thermistor and or heater wire, and as the printer is trying to heat, it says, how about no, and resets itself. My guess is that your heater wires are touching each other and they are shorting, and instead of your motherboard frying itself, it is shutting down and restarting to save itself. Here's a pro tip. If your printer for some reason is instantly restarting, stop. Address the issue at hand. The issue at hand is that we've got a pretty big blob of doom. If you are unable to heat up the printer, fine. We have to go to the next step, which is remove your fan, remove the front cover, make sure to remove those 2 screws from the fan, and this entire front cover plus radial fan will come off. Once you're able to get that off, you can get a heat gun and slowly heat this blob off. If you're unable to heat the printer, it is what it is. You have to go to alternate means, and this is a good way to do it. I recommend doing this when the printer is on, 1, so you can maintain and monitor, but 2, if it does get too warm, this fan should hopefully cool off your heat sink, keeping you from melting your machine. Now, understand you're gonna have a heat gun next to printed parts, so be careful. If you are not certain about this succeeding, it is always, always, always better to have a spare. If you don't have a second printer to print spare parts with, reach out to a friend or someone that might be able to help you out to print out spare parts. That way, if you give it a little too many beans, you're gonna be able to just replace the parts. Once the parts start to melt, they're wasted anyways. Might as well give it the full enchilada at that point. Now, how to keep this from happening is a little bit more nebulous. We've talked about this before on the channel, that silicone sockets are one of the easiest, cheapest, and most effective insurance policies when it comes to 3D printing. And for some odd reason, Prusas don't come with them stock. It's literally the one of very few upgrades that I recommend you do on a Prusa. But I like how the comment section here says, well, it's a good reason to go to a Revo, which in all fairness is actually true. Revos are phenomenal, but you don't have to replace the hot end. This is likely a wiring issue, so get down to the basics and fix the wiring issue. Now, if you can figure out whether it is your heater or your thermistor, you can just cut them. And frankly, if you're not really wanting to deal with all of this BS, you can actually pull off the front of your extruder as well up here. It's a couple of bolts on the backside will let you pull that out, and then you can drop your entire hot end out. From there, you can heat the hell out of it, pull the blob off, remove your heater and thermistor, and then torch your hot end to clean it up. We recommend using some firearm cleaning brushes. Normally, the copper ones are my favorite, although you can use nylon, assuming you're not running your printer hot. But I use the copper ones to clean off nozzles and extra schmoo that happens to get on my print heads. And this classifies as a metric amount of schmoo. Get a sock. Hopefully this is recoverable, but you're definitely going to need at least a new heater, if not a heater and thermistor. Next up, a fan submission from one of our Patreon members, Devoid Colossus. And remember, if you want to come and hang out with us in our Discord server, you can join our Patreon for $10 or more, and that will get you access to the Patreon Discord, where you can come and hang out with the rest of us and have way too much fun. We've been having a lot of fun in that Discord recently. We've got some ringing. Devoid Colossus over here saying, you can ring my bell. Good sir. Unfortunately, we've got a bit of a problem here. How to remove all of this ringing. Now, from what I can tell, this ringing is directly in line with the belt profile of a GT2. Every one of these is where a GT2 might be. So this is on his Cheaty Mate S, and to quote, I've gotten it exponentially better by slowing the speeds down overall to 50 millimeters per second and dropping the jerk to 6 millimeters per second, down from 9. Should I keep going lower on the jerk speeds? All belts are adequate in tension and none are looser than any other. More ringing on the X-axis than Y. It is a tolerable amount now, but since I'm making it parts for a customer, I'd like them to be free of as many defects as possible. And is it Cheaty, Kitty? It's the QIDI brand. Let me know how you pronounce them down in the comments below. Shiny filaments are going to show ringing worse than most any other filaments, right? Because you're going to see the reflection and refraction from light as it hits the part. So this might just be part and parcel, but I am wondering if the belts are a little too tight or you're hitting some sort of resonance. And when you slow the speed, or you could even up the speed, if you see difference in changes, you're hitting nodes or hopefully anti-nodes. We're not always making parts like this for clients, and these are a little unrealistic in terms of expectations. If you are noticing ringing in parts that you're trying to sell, obviously that is something to deal with. But if you're only noticing it on things like calibration cubes that have hard corners, short movements on the X and Y, it might not be worth your time. And to be clear, this is a problem, but if it's not one that shows up in parts that matter, is it really a problem? Now, we could also have some bearing issues. We can see that it is much closer on the X than it is on the Y. That leads me to believe that we might have a bearing that might be a little chewy or a little crunchy. So take a look at the bearings as well, make sure that they're spinning freely. If they're not, you can add a little bit of oil to them, see if that frees them up, and if all else fails, go ahead and just replace the bearings. Now, the Cheaty printer is not one that comes with a bunch of support from the factory, nor from the community. It's actually, their whole brand is not one that's entirely well known, as far as I'm concerned, but they don't make a bad machine. They make a lot of plastic in their machines, which can potentially lead to resonance issues. As we've seen on printers like the Bamboo Lab, X1 Carbon, the X1, and the P1P, they go through a resonance feature when you go to start a print, assuming you actually turn that on. That helps reduce those vibrations because the printer can detect where those resonances occur and work on dealing with them. Now, a printer like the Cheaty is not as advanced, you could say, and so it doesn't feature those things from the factory. Could you add them? Sure. Is it worth it? No. So what can we do here? Clearly, to me, we've got a belt issue, or we've got a resonance issue. So I would take a look at those belts and watch them as the printer is moving. Are they bouncing up and down? Are they resonating like crazy? If they are, you gotta deal with your speeds and see if there's something that you can do. Jerk lowering it is nice, but it's going to slow down your printer in the corners to try to not deviate all that much. The less jerk you have, the less deviation your printer allows itself, which means it needs to slow down more in the corners. I'm not exactly certain, again, if this is such a big deal. These parts could just be really showing off the problem rather than showing off the solution, which is, I mean, honestly, not a bad print past the ringing. Layer lines look clean. Nothing else here seems to be the problem. Adequate cooling from what I can tell. So I'm not really upset about this. As long as the parts that are being sold look good, I don't think we have anything to be worried about. Anybody know what this piece is called? It sits on the extruder. Yes, this is probably the most value engineered part on an Ender. This is your extruder idler. And the first thing that I tell anybody to do that has bought an Ender is either one, just replace the extruder with one of those dual gear extruders, or two, print a spare arm, because this will happen. It is a guarantee. It happens to everybody. They have cheapened out and made this as functionally thin as possible, and it has a stress riser. And they all fail like this eventually, and it sucks. Because if you don't have any other printers, you're kind of stuck trying to glue this back together. The problem is on Enders, and even with those red dual gear extruders, the springs are way too tight. It does not need to be 1/10 of the tension that it is. And that causes undue stress on the plastic or metal components of the printer. In fact, it can cause so much pressure on your stepper motor that you can wear out the bearings in your stepper motor pretty quickly. So just like, I don't know. I don't know why companies chose. I mean, I do know why, because the yellow springs are the same ones that they use for the beds, and it's one less SKU that they have to keep in stock. Anyways, you can replace the extruder. That's fine. I would say if you have no other printer, I would do some super glue to put it back together. I would get a soldering iron and make some slits in here that will kind of melt it all together, kind of basically weld out the seam, if you will. And that should hold long enough to move you through. And if this is ABS, you can also use acetone to bond it together, which is, you know, not a bad move either. Inner USB draw capability. Was thinking a USB camera might be nice and simple to add using the inner USB outlet. Anybody know what it's rated to? This is on the Elegoo Jupiter. We talked about this in our video earlier this week about my top 5 resin 3D printers under $500. We'll card that video so you guys can take a look. Oh dear Lord, have mercy. Please don't do that unless you do something with a step-down converter of some sort. Elegoo uses a USB-A port. However, it is not 5 volts. And I know that USB now with USB-C can go all the way up to 20 volts. And some are actually going higher. This is not one of those cases. They're just feeding higher voltage through the USB port. This is obviously a way for them to make things easier on their side. I don't necessarily agree with it because people are going to plug things into it and they're going to fry their electronic devices. And I know that Elegoo puts a sticker on it, or at least they used to. I don't know if the Jupiter comes with one, but they normally put a sticker over it letting you know not to do it. But are you really going to, one, remember that, two, listen to that? Come on, we're makers. Do we listen to warning symbols or do we try to make our own warning symbols? You know who you are. Comment below. But yes, you could do just like this, wire a 5-volt step down and into a power port for a Pi Zero and camera. And as we can see, Mr. Chris Catlett, of course, who is the individual that gave us this fail, thank you, sir, for your assistance, as always, says, do not plug anything other than the filter into that port. The port is 24 volts at half an amp, and that will release the magic smoke. And if you don't know what the magic smoke is, plug in a USB device into that. You'll find out what the magic smoke is. It is an engineering oversight to me that I just don't understand why. They built a very good printer. In fact, the Jupiter won a honorable mention. It's too expensive to be in the sub $500 category, but it won an honorable mention because it is a great printer for the money. However, this kind of thing just makes me go, huh? Like, why? How much harder would it have been to use a different type of plug, whether it's a barrel jack, an XT60, XT30, something else that is not such a ubiquitous standard like USB that someone would accidentally plug a USB device into it. I'm sure it was for a cost-saving thing, or they could get an off-the-shelf board that would do all of this, but still something that kind of grinds my gears the wrong way. You know what I'm saying? Next up, a fail from one of our Patreon members, Printed Parts from the Discord. This is a Revo fail, and it's a rough Revo fail at that. I'm assuming they were trying to print nylon. Now, I'm not certain because I don't think we got that answer because I don't think I asked. I did not ask, unfortunately, but they know this is the nylon sheet, so I'm assuming it is actually nylon. Something to note here, again, big blob of doom, big problem, but we can see the silicone sock actually worked. This is how they found the printer. They found it with the blob had already being melted off. You can see the silicone sock for the 0.4 nozzle sitting right there. But Grant, how do you know that's the 0.4? Well, inquisitive viewer, that's because the Revo line is actually color-coded for its silicone socks, and you know what nozzle is in the printer based on the color of the sock. So, A+ E3D. I really do like that. And we can see that the nozzle looks fine. I don't really see any issues with the nozzle. I'm sure it's coated in a massive amount of goo. But really, the failure here is if this is nylon, that's like 15 bucks of quality nylon. And that sucks. Nobody likes having that happen. We had a part that just didn't stick. In fact, it was too close. So this entire part is way too close, or it's just not sticking, period. But we can also see that it looks like the Revo nozzle's been dragging across the build plate. And unfortunately, this is not their first time having this problem. Now, something that I didn't consider, but apparently can happen. After a blob of doom, a Revo can unscrew itself a little bit. And that means the next time you go to run your printer, you end up gouging into your plate, which is exactly what happened here. And like intrinsically, that makes sense to me, right? When you think about it, it makes sense that something like this could actually occur, but it's never something that I've put a ton of thought into. So duly noted, every now and then, just make sure your Revo is nice and tight. And if your first layer does look a little bit too close and you haven't changed your Revo and you haven't done anything to it, verify your nozzle's actually tight. I guess you could say that the one-handed cold nozzle change is both a benefit and a detractor. I guess it all depends on how you look at it though. This one made me think though, because it's not something that I've ever really put a bunch of effort or thought into. The Revos have just always worked for me, but it's totally not impossible that it could unscrew. Something now to keep an eye on. Because of course your regular nozzles won't unscrew because they're hot tightened. And if they do unscrew, you didn't hot tighten your nozzle. So yeah, interesting to say the least. Anyways, guys, that's all I have for you today. PrintFix Friday, episode 66. We're getting close. Hilariously, the first one of the new year will be a meme episode. So make sure to submit your memes for episode 69. We'd love to have them. That's all I got for you guys today. Make sure to leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought of these fails. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. And as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one. Hey, thanks so much for watching this video, and a massive thank you goes out to all of our Patreon and YouTube channel member supporters whose names are listed right next to me at the $5 tier and higher. Thank you for all that you do to make these videos possible. Of course, if you want to help us out as well, you can do so by pledging as low as $1 a month via Patreon or YouTube in the links down in that description below. But, of course, it's not necessary. Right below me will be the entire PrintFixFriday series where you can go back and look at all the other fails that we've looked at, and a couple of meme episodes in there as well. And right next to me will be my favorite FDM 3D printers under $500, and we might have some fun updates to that one coming soon. I'll see you guys down in the comments and in the next one. Take care.